The golden throne trembled. Tech priests scrambled across gilded walkways as warning runes flared crimson across 1,000 monitors. Deep within the inner palace of Terra, in a chamber where time itself seemed to pause in reverence, the mummified form of the Emperor of Mankind stirred for the first time in 10,000 years. The impossibility of it sent the custodian guards to their knees, their auramite armor clanging against marble floors inscribed with wards of containment. From his withered lips came not words, but a psychic scream that shattered the minds of 1,000 astropaths across the segmentum. "The throne is failing," whispered a hooded magos, binary code spilling from his vox grill in terrified bursts. "The connection to the Astronomicon is destabilizing." The Emperor's skeletal fingers twitched, golden light bleeding from beneath his papery skin. The entire chamber filled with blinding radiance, forcing even the gene-enhanced eyes of the Adeptus Custodes to squint against its intensity. Space itself warped around the throne, reality tearing like parchment. "Secure the Emperor," roared Shield Captain Valoris, his guardian spear leveled at the growing anomaly. The warp intrudes upon this sacred place, but it was not the warp that reached for the Emperor. Something else, a force neither of chaos nor of the material realm, pulled at the master of mankind. The psychic backlash flattened a dozen custodians against the walls as a cataclysmic flash of golden light consumed everything. When it receded, the tech priests beheld their greatest fear made manifest. The golden throne stood empty. In another universe, above another Earth, the cosmic entity known as the Spectre paused in his eternal vigil. Something immense had brushed against the fabric of creation, something divine, yet terribly mortal. The phantom stranger looked up from beneath his wide-brimmed hat, his ageless eyes following the trajectory of a golden meteor that streaked across the night sky of Gotham City. Within the Batcave, alarms shrieked to life. Bruce Wayne glanced up from his workbench. Cowl pulled back from his face as Alfred approached with uncharacteristic urgency. "Sir, the sensors are detecting a massive energy signature unlike anything we've recorded. It appears to be of extraterrestrial origin, but the readings suggest temporal displacement as well." Batman studied the monitors, his eyes narrowing at the golden trajectory that terminated in the Gotham Harbor Industrial District. "Contact the League. This feels different." In the broken concrete of an abandoned shipyard, a crater smoldered. Golden light pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating the fog rolling in from the harbor waters. Slowly, a figure rose from the impact site, impossibly tall, clad in ornate golden armor that seemed to absorb and reflect the dim streetlights. His face was noble beyond human measure, framed by dark hair that moved in an unfelt breeze. Eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of stars surveyed this new world with cold calculation. The Emperor of Mankind had arrived. He felt the absence, immediately, the crushing silence where the constant chorus of humanity's faith should have been. The Astronomicon, that psychic beacon which guided mankind through the warp, was gone. His connection to the collective consciousness of humanity remained, but it was changed. Unfocused, primitive. This was not his Terra, not his Imperium. Yet humanity lived here. He could sense them. Billions of souls burning like candles in the darkness, their potential unguided and squandered. Just as they had been before he revealed himself during the Age of Strife. Just as they had been before he united Terra under one banner and began the Great Crusade. "I have returned," he whispered, his voice causing the very air to vibrate. "But not to where I belong." The Emperor raised his hand, reaching out with his vast psychic might to touch the minds of this world. Knowledge flooded into him, extracted from the collective unconscious of humanity. A world of heroes and villains, of metahumans and aliens, of gods who walked among mortals. A world that had not known the horrors of the dark age of technology, that had not faced the full predations of the warp, that remained naive to the true threats lurking beyond the stars. The Emperor's expression hardened. Here was humanity, vulnerable as ever, relying on alien protectors and metahuman saviors. Had he not seen this pattern before? Had he not witnessed how such dependence would ultimately lead to humanity's downfall? The ruinous powers would find this realm eventually. Chaos always did. And when it came, would these costumed heroes be enough to stand against it? Though he had seen the future once before, he knew what had to be done. From his armor he drew a massive two-handed sword, its blade igniting with golden fire that cast long shadows across the abandoned shipyard. The Emperor of Mankind planted the weapon in the broken concrete, sending a psychic pulse across the globe. It was not a declaration of war. Not yet. It was a beacon, a calling card, a statement of intent. Humanity would be united once more under his guidance. He would forge a new imperium here, preparing this world for threats it did not yet comprehend. And he would suffer no opposition, not from aliens, not from metahumans, not even from gods. In the watchtower orbiting Earth, the Justice League systems registered the psychic pulse. Superman felt it like a physical pressure against his consciousness, something his Kryptonian physiology had never experienced before. Wonder Woman's eyes widened in recognition, the divine aspect of her nature responding to the godlike power that had announced itself. "By Hera," she whispered. "What is that?" Batman's voice came through their communicators, tense and focused. "It's in Gotham. I'm heading there now. Superman, Diana, I need you there as soon as possible." Clark Kent was already moving, his cape billowing behind him as he raced through the corridors of the watchtower toward the teleportation chambers. Whatever had just arrived on Earth radiated power unlike anything he had encountered before. It wasn't Darkseid. It wasn't Brainiac. It wasn't any threat they had faced before. It was something older, something that felt almost human yet transcended humanity entirely. The Emperor sensed their approach before they appeared. 3 individuals, each powerful in their own right. One, a Kryptonian, his cells charged with solar energy, his mind pure and unburdened by corruption. Another, a woman touched by the divine, wielding implements of mythic power. And the third, merely human. Yet his mind was razor-sharp, analytical, dangerous in its comprehension. He did not move from where he stood, his flaming sword planted before him like a standard. He would meet these champions of this earth on his terms. The air displaced as Superman descended from the night sky, his red cape settling around his shoulders as he touched down 20 meters from the Golden Giant. Wonder Woman arrived moments later, the lasso of truth glowing faintly at her hip as she positioned herself beside the Man of Steel. Batman emerged from the shadows at the perimeter of the shipyard, his cape blending with the darkness. "Identify yourself," Superman called, his voice firm but diplomatic. "Why have you come to Earth?" The Emperor regarded them silently for a long moment, his ageless face unreadable. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "I am the Emperor of Mankind, the Master of Terra, the Anathema to Chaos." Each title resonated with psychic force, "and I have come to save humanity from itself." Wonder Woman stepped forward, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "We protect this world already. If you come in peace, we welcome you. If you come with conquest in mind, you will find Earth is well defended." A flicker of something like amusement crossed the Emperor's face. "Peace, conquest. Such simple terms for the complex work of species survival. I come to unify, to guide, to prepare. The threats you have faced are but shadows of what lurks beyond the veil of reality." Batman remained in the darkness, analyzing every word, every movement of this self-proclaimed emperor. His cowl's sensors recorded energy readings off the charts, primarily concentrated around the stranger's nervous system and the flaming sword. "We've faced threats from across the universe," Superman replied. "We've defended Earth from gods and monsters. Whatever dangers you foresee, we can face them together, as allies." The Emperor's golden eyes fixed on Superman. "You are Kryptonian, an alien." His gaze shifted to Wonder Woman. "And you, touched by the divine entities of ancient myth." Finally, his attention turned to the shadows where Batman stood. "Only one of you is purely human, and yet he stands in the darkness, suspicious where he should be faithful." With a fluid motion, the Emperor pulled his sword from the ground. The concrete cracked further at its removal. "I have seen this pattern before. Humanity relying on alien protectors, on God-touched champions. Such dependency weakens the species, leaves it vulnerable to predations you cannot imagine." He raised his free hand, and a pulse of golden energy expanded outward, washing over the 3 heroes. Superman and Wonder Woman staggered slightly, while Batman gritted his teeth against a sudden migraine. "I have touched your minds, learned of this world in greater detail," the Emperor continued. "There are elements here that must be purged, corrupting influences that would provide footholds for chaos." Superman recovered quickly, his eyes narrowing. You invaded our thoughts without permission. That's not how we do things here. Necessity rarely asks permission, the Emperor replied coldly. Already I see the weaknesses in your world order. Psychic talents left untrained and unregulated. Alien technologies integrated without understanding their implications. Gods walking among mortals playing at being heroes while humanity remains dependent on their protection. Wonder Woman's grip tightened on her sword. You speak of tyranny disguised as protection. I speak of survival, the Emperor countered. I united my Terra under one banner, led humanity to the stars and protected them from horrors you cannot comprehend. I will do so again, here. Batman's voice cut through the tension. And those who disagree with your vision? The Emperor's gaze was cold. They will see reason, or they will be removed from the equation. Humanity's survival supersedes individual freedom. Superman moved then, faster than human eyes could follow, positioning himself directly before the Emperor. Despite the Kryptonian's impressive height, he had to look up to meet the Emperor's eyes. That's not going to happen, Superman stated firmly. Not on this Earth. The shipyard fell silent, tension crackling in the air like electricity. Then, with a speed that surprised even Superman, the Emperor's hand shot out, gripping the Man of Steel by the throat. Golden energy coursed from the Emperor's gauntlet, and Superman felt something he rarely experienced: pain. Your conviction is admirable, the Emperor said quietly, but misplaced. With a casual display of strength, he hurled Superman through the air. The Kryptonian crashed through an abandoned warehouse before regaining control of his flight. Wonder Woman was already moving, her sword slashing toward the Emperor's armored form. The Emperor parried her strike with his flaming blade, the clash sending sparks of mundane and divine energy showering around them. Interesting, he noted. Your weapons have been blessed by entities similar to those in my reality, but they are pale imitations of true power. Wonder Woman spun away from a counterattack, her bracelets deflecting a blast of golden energy. You'll find I'm full of surprises, she retorted, lashing out with her lasso. The golden rope wrapped around the Emperor's sword arm, and Wonder Woman pulled with all her Amazonian strength. The Emperor didn't budge. Instead, he grasped the lasso of truth with his free hand, sending his own golden energy coursing through the divine artifact. Truth, he mused, a concept I value highly. With a sharp tug, he pulled Wonder Woman toward him, meeting her charge with the pommel of his sword to her solar plexus. The blow sent her tumbling across the concrete. But truth without purpose is merely data. A series of explosions erupted against the Emperor's back as Batman entered the fray, launching a barrage of specialized batarangs. The Emperor turned, seemingly unharmed, as Superman re-entered the battlefield, his eyes glowing red with building heat vision. Enough, the Emperor commanded, and the single word carried psychic weight that caused all three heroes to momentarily falter. Taking advantage of their hesitation, the Emperor raised his sword high. The golden flames along the blade intensified, burning with the brightness of a small sun. Then he brought it down against the ground with earth-shattering force. A shockwave of psychic energy exploded outward, throwing Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman backward. Concrete shattered, metal twisted, and the abandoned buildings around the shipyard collapsed into rubble. As the dust settled, the Emperor stood unmoving at the epicenter of destruction, his armor untouched by the chaos he had unleashed. This confrontation serves no purpose, he declared. I have not come to destroy but to build, to elevate humanity beyond its current limitations. Batman struggled to his feet, his cape torn, a trickle of blood running from his nose from the psychic backlash. By appointing yourself as its dictator, the Emperor regarded the Dark Knight with something approaching respect. Your mind is strong for an unaugmented human. In my Imperium, you would have been valuable as an inquisitor. He turned his attention to Superman and Wonder Woman as they regrouped. I will leave you to consider what you have witnessed here. When next we meet, you will have a choice to make. Stand with humanity's future or against it. With those words, the Emperor's form began to glow with increasing intensity. Golden light enveloped him until his silhouette was barely visible. Then, in a flash that temporarily blinded even Superman's enhanced vision, he was gone, teleported away through means none of them fully understood. In the silence that followed, Batman activated his communicator. Alfred, alert the rest of the League. Priority Alpha, and contact Constantine. We're going to need expertise in both science and magic to understand what we're dealing with. Superman helped Wonder Woman to her feet, his expression grim. Whatever he is, he's powerful. Maybe the most powerful being we've ever encountered. Wonder Woman nodded, wincing slightly from the blow she had received. He is not merely powerful, Cal, he is divine, or as close to it as a mortal can become. I felt it. He has walked a path similar to the gods, but chosen differently. Batman rejoined them, his analytical mind already working through the implications. He called himself the Emperor of Mankind and the Master of Terra. His armor, his weapons, his abilities, none of it matches anything in our records. He's not from our universe, Superman concluded. That much is clear, Batman added darkly. And he intends to reshape our world in his image. We need to find him before he makes his next move. But the Emperor was already moving. His consciousness spread across the globe like a golden web as he psychically surveyed this new Earth. This would not be a war of brute force alone. This would be a strategic campaign, methodical, precise, to secure humanity's future. Just as he had done once before, so long ago the Great Crusade would begin anew. In the heart of Metropolis, Lex Luthor stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching as golden light briefly illuminated the night sky over Gotham in the distance. His sensors had detected the energy spike. His computers were already analyzing the data. A slight smile curved his lips. A new player had entered the game, one who might perhaps share his vision of humanity's potential, freed from alien influence. How interesting, Luthor murmured. Deep within the Pentagon, General Sam Lane was being briefed on the energy signature detected in Gotham. Sir, it briefly overwhelmed all our monitoring systems. Whatever it was putting out more power than a nuclear detonation, but it was contained somehow. Lane's expression was grim. Get me everything we have on this and put our metahuman containment units on standby. If this is a new threat, I want us prepared. In the Tower of Fate, Dr. Fate's helmet suddenly blazed with arcane energy. Kent Nelson staggered as visions flooded his mind. The timeline of Earth shifting in ways the Lords of Order had not foreseen. A new god walks among us, he whispered. Neither order nor chaos, but something that defies both. Across the globe, those sensitive to mystical and psychic energies felt the disturbance. John Constantine woke in a cold sweat, reaching automatically for his cigarettes. The phantom stranger appeared silently beside the specter, both watching as golden light flickered across the ethereal plane. Swamp Thing sensed a new consciousness touching the green, ancient and powerful, yet somehow divorced from nature's cycles. And in the deepest reaches of space, on the planet Apocalypse, Darkseid paused on his obsidian throne, his eyes narrowing slightly. Interesting, the new god murmured. The equation has changed. The Emperor materialized on Mount Everest, the highest peak of this Earth, just as he had once stood upon the highest mountains of his own Terra, before revealing himself to humanity. From this vantage point, his psychic senses could extend further, mapping the geopolitical divisions of this world, identifying centers of power, potential allies, and inevitable opposition. This Earth was different from his own. No age of strife had ravaged its civilizations. No men of iron had rebelled against their masters. The warp existed here, but in a different form, accessible through what this world called magic, rather than the nightmarish dimension of his reality. And humanity shared this world with metahumans, aliens and entities that called themselves gods. All of it would need to be categorized, evaluated, and either incorporated into his new imperium, or eliminated. The Emperor closed his eyes, focusing his immense psychic might. Across the globe, hundreds of individuals suddenly sat upright in their beds, their offices, their secret laboratories. Men and women of exceptional intellect, unwavering conviction, technical brilliance, or political acumen, all of them felt a calling, a purpose suddenly crystallized in their minds. The seeds of the new imperium were being planted, the first of his mortal servants awakening to their true purpose. It had begun. In the Batcave, the Justice League had assembled for an emergency meeting. Batman stood before the main computer, displaying footage captured from his cowl's recording systems. His power levels are unlike anything we've encountered, Batman explained. Energy signatures similar to Dr. Fate or Zatanna's magic, but orders of magnitude greater and somehow more structured. almost technological in nature. He called himself the Emperor of Mankind, Superman added, still visibly shaken. He spoke as if he had ruled Earth before, in another reality. Dr. Fate stepped forward, his golden helmet gleaming in the dim light of the cave. The Lords of Order sense a fundamental shift in our timeline. This being exists simultaneously within and outside our dimensional framework. He brings knowledge and power from a reality where the metaphysical operates under different laws. Can we send him back? Flash asked. If he's from another dimension, there must be a way to return him. It's not that simple, Batman replied. We don't know how he got here, or if a return is even possible. And from what he said, he has no intention of leaving. Wonder Woman's expression was troubled. There is something familiar about him. The gods of Olympus spoke of times before their ascension, when beings of pure will walked between worlds. The Titans of Thought, they called them. Cyborg, connected to the Bat-computer, suddenly straightened. We've got activity. Multiple reports coming in of individuals across the globe suddenly abandoning their positions, their families, their lives, scientists, military officers, government officials, and all heading to specific locations. On the main screen, a global map appeared, dotted with dozens of red points, each representing a reported disappearance. The dots began to cluster around key regions. He's recruiting, Batman said grimly, or controlling them somehow. Mind control, Green Lantern suggested. That golden energy he emitted could be some kind of telepathic influence. No. Martian Manhunter's voice was calm but certain. It is not control as we understand it. I sense something more subtle. He has touched their minds, yes, but he has amplified what was already there. Ambition, conviction, purpose. They follow willingly because he has shown them a vision that resonates with their deepest beliefs. That's worse than mind control, Superman muttered. He's weaponizing faith. Batman turned to the assembled heroes. We need more information. Fate, Zatanna, Constantine, work on the mystical angle. Cyborg, coordinate with STAR Labs to analyze the energy signatures. Superman, Wonder Woman, maintain surveillance from orbit. The rest of you, monitor these gathering points. We need to understand what he's planning before we confront him again. As the League dispersed to their assignments, Batman remained at the computer, replaying the footage once more. The Emperor's words echoed in his mind. I united my Terra under one banner, led humanity to the stars, and protected them from horrors you cannot comprehend. What horrors could be so terrible that they justified the kind of totalitarian rule the Emperor envisioned? What had this being witnessed in his reality that drove him to such extremes? Batman had always prepared for threats from beyond Earth, from other dimensions, even from gods. But this was something new, a being who claimed to have already ruled humanity once, who had guided their evolution and protected them from cosmic threats, a being who believed so absolutely in his vision that he saw no ethical problem in subjugating free will for what he believed to be the greater good, the most dangerous kind of tyrant, one who truly believed he was the hero. In Washington, D.C., the Emperor walked through the halls of power like a ghost unseen by mortal eyes. His psychic abilities allowed him to move through reality slightly out of phase, observing without being observed. He studied the institutions of governance in this nation that styled itself a superpower. Primitive compared to the administratum of his imperium, but the foundations were sound. He paused in the Oval Office, watching the president engaged in a heated discussion with military advisors about the energy signature detected in Gotham and the subsequent disappearances of key personnel. I want answers, not excuses, the president demanded. If this is an invasion, I need to know what we're facing and how to stop it. The Emperor could have revealed himself then, could have taken control of the world's most powerful nation in an instant. But that was not his way. Conquest through force alone was inefficient and unstable. True conquest began in the hearts and minds of the populace. The military and political machinery would follow. He continued his invisible tour, moving next to the United Nations headquarters in New York. Here, representatives of nations argued and debated, seeking compromise where their interests aligned and obstruction where they did not. Inefficient, but not without merit as a concept. In his Imperium, the High Lords of Terra had served a similar function, though their debates had been streamlined by the common purpose he had instilled. The seeds he had planted in the minds of key individuals would soon bear fruit. Scientists, who would develop the technologies needed to elevate humanity, military minds who would form the backbone of his new imperial army, politicians who would pave the way for unification through legislation rather than warfare where possible. But first, a demonstration was required, something to show humanity both the threats they faced and the protection he offered. The Emperor shifted his focus, his consciousness extending beyond Earth to the dark spaces between stars. There he found what he was looking for, a fragment of his reality that had come with him, a splinter of the warp that had followed in his wake like a lingering echo. With subtle psychic manipulation, he began to guide it toward Earth. Not a full demonic incursion, nothing so catastrophic, but enough to create the crisis he required. A controlled threat that would allow him to present himself as the solution. 3 days after his arrival, the Emperor made his first public appearance. The United Nations General Assembly had convened an emergency session to address the global phenomenon of key personnel abandoning their posts. As representatives argued over jurisdiction and response protocols, the grand doors to the chamber swung open with supernatural force. The Emperor entered, his massive armored form dwarfing the human security personnel who moved to intercept him. With a mere gesture, he froze them in place, or not harming them, but rendering them immobile through psychic dominance. Gasps and cries of alarm filled the chamber as he strode down the central aisle, his golden armor gleaming under the institutional lighting. When he reached the speaking podium, he surveyed the representatives of Earth's nations, his ageless face impassive. "I am the Emperor of mankind." His voice carried to every ear without the need for amplification. "I have walked among you unseen, observing your institutions, your conflicts, your aspirations. I have judged them, and found them simultaneously admirable and insufficient." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some reaching for phones, others for concealed weapons. Unperturbed, the Emperor continued, "You stand at a crossroads. Your world has attracted the attention of forces beyond your comprehension. Your metahuman champions and alien allies have provided a shield, but it is a fragile one, dependent on individuals rather than the collective strength of humanity." On the massive screens behind him, images appeared projected directly from his mind, visions of horrors from his reality, demonic incursions, Tyranid hive fleets, Necron tomb worlds awakening, the ruinous powers of chaos corrupting entire planets. These are the threats that humanity faced in my reality, threats that required unity, purpose, and unwavering vigilance to combat. The images shifted to show his Imperium at its height before the Horus Heresy. Mighty fleets traversing the stars, armies of genetically enhanced warriors standing against the darkness, worlds transformed into fortresses of humanity. A unified Terra under one banner. I led humanity to the stars. I created defenders capable of withstanding these horrors. Now his voice took on a harder edge. And I will do so again here. The Secretary General found his voice standing shakily. "Sir, you cannot simply declare yourself our ruler. We have protocols, democratic processes." The Emperor's golden eyes fixed on the man. "Democracy is a luxury of peaceful times, of secure borders. Your world stands naked before the void, divided by petty nationalisms and ideological disputes, while existential threats gather at the threshold of your reality." Screens throughout the building suddenly flickered, showing live feeds from around the world. In 12 major cities, strange atmospheric disturbances were forming, swirling vortexes of unnatural energy, crimson and purple and sickly green, tearing at the fabric of reality. "Even now it begins," the Emperor stated. "A fragment of the warp has followed me to your reality. Consider it a demonstration of what awaits a disunified humanity." Panic began to spread through the assembly as reports flooded in. The disturbances were expanding, and from within them shapes were emerging. Twisted, malevolent entities that defied natural law, their very presence causing psychic distress to those nearby. "Your heroes will respond," the Emperor continued. "They will fight bravely. Some may even fall. But when the crisis reaches its peak, ask yourselves this: would unified action under singular purpose not be more efficient? Would humanity standing as one not be stronger than scattered bands of costumed vigilantes?" With that final statement hanging in the air, the Emperor's form began to glow with golden light. In a flash that left after images on the retinas of everyone present, he vanished. Chaos erupted in the chamber as delegates scrambled to contact their governments to verify the emerging crisis. On every screen, the images remained, playing on loop. The horrors of the Emperor's reality, the glory of his imperium, and the current emergencies unfolding across Earth. The message was clear. The threat was real, and the Emperor had positioned himself as the solution. Across the globe, the Justice League mobilized. Superman and Wonder Woman flew to Beijing, where the largest of the warp rifts had opened above Tiananmen Square. Flash raced to London. Green Lantern to Rio de Janeiro. Aquaman to Sydney Harbor. Batman coordinated from the Watchtower, Cyborg beside him monitoring the global situation. In Beijing, Superman hovered before the pulsing rift, heat vision ready as chitinous limbs reached through the dimensional tear. Beside him, Wonder Woman's lasso glowed with divine power. "Whatever these things are, they're not from any dimension we've encountered before," Superman shouted over the psychic distortion emanating from the rift. "They feel wrong somehow," he added. "They are abominations," Wonder Woman replied, her divine senses recoiling from the entities emerging from the rift, corruptions of natural law. The first creature fully emerged, a twisted amalgamation of insectoid limbs, exposed muscle tissue, and countless eyes. It screeched at a frequency that shattered windows for blocks around, its mandibles dripping acidic saliva that hissed on the pavement. Superman's heat vision lanced out, searing through the creature's torso. It shrieked but continued advancing, the wound knitting closed with unnatural speed. More of the entities poured through the rift. Their forms varied, but all shared the same fundamental wrongness. Wonder Woman's sword slashed through limbs and torsos, her superhuman strength allowing her to dismember the creatures faster than they could regenerate. "There are too many," she called to Superman, and the rift continues to widen. In London, Flash was a blur of motion, evacuating civilians from the area around Trafalgar Square, where a similar rift had opened. The entities there were different, incorporeal wraiths of violet energy that induced hallucinations and paranoia in those they touched. Flash's speed protected him somewhat, but even he could feel the psychic pressure against his mind. "Guys, I don't know how long I can keep this up," he reported through his communicator. "These things aren't physical. I can't punch them. Fall back to a defensive perimeter," Batman ordered. "Dr. Fate and Zatanna are en route to your position. They'll handle the mystical elements." In the Watchtower, Batman studied the global map with growing concern. The rifts were appearing in a precise pattern, forming a 12-pointed star across Earth's surface when connected. It was too deliberate to be coincidental. "This is orchestrated," he concluded. "The Emperor is behind it," Cyborg stated. "But why would he unleash these horrors if he claims to protect humanity?" "To prove a point," Batman replied grimly. "He's showing us what he protected his Earth from, and demonstrating that our current defenses are inadequate." As if on cue, reports began pouring in of military forces engaging the entities with catastrophic results. Conventional weapons proved largely ineffective. Soldiers exposed to the psychic emanations experienced hallucinations, turned on each other, or simply collapsed into catatonic states. Only the meta-human heroes were making any headway, and even they were being gradually overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and alien nature of their opponents. Then, just as the situation grew most dire, new forces entered the fray. In Beijing, as Superman and Wonder Woman fought a desperate holding action, golden light flared at the perimeter of the battle zone. A phalanx of armored figures appeared, led by a woman in ornate golden power armor reminiscent of the Emperor's own, though scaled to human proportions. "Justice League," the woman's amplified voice carried across the chaos. "Stand aside. The Emperor protects." The armored soldiers advanced in perfect formation, wielding weapons that fired bolts of golden energy. Where the beams struck the warp entities, they didn't just damage the creatures. They unmade them, erasing their corrupted existence from reality itself. The woman raised a staff topped with a golden eagle, and a wave of purifying light swept outward, causing the smaller entities to dissolve into ash. The larger ones shrieked in pain and rage, retreating toward the rift. "Who are you?" Superman demanded, hovering beside the woman. Her helmet retracted, revealing a stern human face with metallic implants visible at her temples. "Inquisitor Helena Valor of the Emperor's Holy Ordos. We have been prepared for this incursion." Similar scenes played out at each rift site. Armored soldiers appeared from nowhere, wielding weapons of incredible power, tools specifically designed to combat these extra-dimensional threats. They moved with military precision, following combat doctrines clearly developed for exactly this type of engagement. In the watchtower, Batman watched the feeds with growing suspicion. These are the people who disappeared over the last 3 days. He's transformed them, given them advanced technology. Cyborg's analysis confirmed it. The energy signatures from their weapons match the Emperor's own output. Their armor incorporates technology far beyond our current capabilities. He's sharing his knowledge selectively, Batman said, creating an army loyal to him alone. On the ground, the tide of battle had turned. The rifts were contracting as the Emperor's forces deployed devices that stabilized the dimensional boundaries. The remaining entities were being systematically eliminated, with minimal casualties among both civilians and the Emperor's soldiers. It was a flawless military operation and a perfect propaganda victory. News feeds worldwide broadcast the same images: the Justice League struggling against an incomprehensible threat, followed by the Emperor's forces arriving to turn the tide, humanity saving itself with technology and discipline that transcended the efforts of individual heroes, no matter how powerful. In Beijing, as the last of the entities was destroyed and the rift sealed, Inquisitor Valor turned to Superman and Wonder Woman. The Emperor extends an invitation, a summit at dawn at his fortress. Your full Justice League is welcome to attend. She handed Superman a data slate with coordinates. He wishes to discuss the future of Earth and humanity's place in the cosmos. With their mission complete, the Emperor's forces teleported away in flashes of golden light, leaving the Justice League members to handle the aftermath and to consider the implications. This was all too convenient. Batman's voice came through the communicator. The timing, the pattern of attacks, the immediate response from his forces. Superman studied the data slate in his hand, its construction unlike any technology he had encountered before. You think he orchestrated this crisis himself? I know he did, Batman replied. The question is, why? What does he gain from this demonstration? Wonder Woman sheathed her sword, watching as local authorities began cordoning off the affected areas. Legitimacy. Public support, Batman said. He showed the world that conventional forces were ineffective, that even we struggled, while his soldiers handled the threat with precision and minimal casualties. A masterful first move, Batman conceded. He's positioned himself as Earth's protector, against a threat only he truly understands. In the smoldering aftermath of the global crisis, media outlets worldwide broadcast the same images on loop: conventional military forces failing, the Justice League fighting valiantly but being gradually overwhelmed, then the Emperor's golden armored soldiers arriving to efficiently neutralize the threat. The narrative wrote itself without the need for explicit propaganda. Humanity had glimpsed horrors beyond comprehension and seen a new force rise to protect them. The Emperor watched these, broadcast from his newly established fortress, a massive structure that had risen from the Sahara Desert overnight, built with technologies beyond human understanding. Golden towers soared toward the sky, surrounded by concentric rings of adamantium walls inscribed with symbols that pulsed with psychic energy. From orbit, the fortress formed the shape of an aquila, the two-headed eagle that had been the symbol of his imperium. Within a vast strategium at the heart of the fortress, the Emperor stood before a hololithic table displaying a real-time model of Earth. Surrounding him were his newly appointed lords and ladies, humans of exceptional ability, who had answered his psychic call, now enhanced with both technology and limited gene modification to better serve his vision. The first phase proceeds as planned, he stated, his deep voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. Humanity has witnessed both the threat and the solution. The Justice League will come to us now seeking answers, perhaps offering alliance. And if they oppose you, my Emperor, asked Inquisitor Valores, her augmented eyes gleaming in the golden light, then they will be shown the error of their perspective, the Emperor replied. This world's heroes fight for admirable ideals, but ideals alone will not secure humanity's future. They lack vision, the ability to see the true threats that gather beyond the veil of reality. A robed figure stepped forward, his face hidden within the shadows of his hood. My lord, the adaptations to the gene seed proceed as scheduled. Within weeks we can begin implementation of the Astartes protocol. The Emperor nodded slowly. Excellent, Magarin. The Space Marine legions were the spear tip of my great crusade once before. They shall be again, though modified to account for the unique metaphysical properties of this reality. Another advisor, a woman with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes, gestured toward a section of the hololithic display showing the United Nations headquarters. The initial diplomatic overtures have begun, my lord. 7 nations have already expressed interest in formal alignment with your nascent imperium. The demonstrations of your power have been most persuasive. Humanity recognizes the call of destiny, Lady Morven, the Emperor said. But true unification will require more than diplomacy or demonstrations of force. It will require faith. He waved his hand over the hololithic display, zooming in on the coordinates he had provided to the Justice League, a plateau in the Sahara, 10 kilometers from his fortress, the site where the summit would take place. Prepare the regalia chamber for our guests, he commanded. When the Justice League arrives, they must glimpse the full majesty of what I offer. Not conquest, but transcendence. Not subjugation, but purpose. As his advisors bowed and departed to execute his commands, the Emperor remained alone with the hololithic display. His golden eyes surveyed the model Earth with the weight of millennia behind them. So similar to his own Terra, yet so different. Untouched by the horrors that had shaped his reality, unprepared for what lurked in the darkness between the stars. He would change that. Whatever the cost, the Justice League gathered in the Watchtower, a full assembly of core members and key allies. Batman stood at the central console, displaying the findings of their investigation into the recent crisis and the Emperor's forces. The energy signatures from the rifts matched those detected when the Emperor first appeared, he explained. He engineered the entire incident using some form of extra-dimensional energy he brought with him from his reality. But the threats were real, Superman countered. Those creatures caused actual damage, took actual lives before they were contained. Calculated losses, Batman replied grimly.
Acceptable casualties from his perspective, to demonstrate the threat and his solution simultaneously. Wonder Woman's expression darkened.
A god playing with mortal lives to prove a point. I have seen such arrogance before, from my own pantheon. Dr. Fate stepped forward, his golden helmet gleaming under the Watchtower's lights. The rifts have left residual energy signatures consistent with what the mystic community calls the beyond, a plane adjacent to our reality, where thought and matter intersect in ways our physical laws cannot describe. If this Emperor comes from a world where such energies are more prevalent, it would explain both his power and his concern. You're suggesting there might be truth to his warnings? Green Lantern interjected. That these threats he's preparing for could be real? The Guardians of Oa have records of civilizations that fell to extra-dimensional predators, Fate confirmed. Entire sectors quarantined because reality itself became corrupted. If similar forces exist in the Emperor's home dimension, his methods may have evolved in response to genuine existential threats. Batman's expression remained cold. His motives are irrelevant if his methods involve subjugating Earth under a dictatorship. No threat justifies the elimination of human freedom. Perhaps we should hear him out, Superman suggested. This summit he's proposed, we go, we listen, we evaluate. If there's a real danger coming, we find a way to address it that doesn't involve surrendering humanity's autonomy. Murmurs of both agreement and concern rippled through the assembled heroes. Batman's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded. We'll accept the invitation, but we go prepared. He turned to Cyborg. Continue analyzing the technology his forces used. Find weaknesses, countermeasures. Already on it, Cyborg confirmed. Those weapons aren't in any database, but they operate on principles that fuse magic with advanced particle physics. Batman turned to Superman and Wonder Woman. You two made physical contact with him. Anything useful? Superman's expression grew troubled. His strength exceeded mine. But it wasn't just physical. There was something else. A force of will so intense it almost had physical form. His mind is vaster than any I've ever sensed. When he unleashed that psychic pulse, Martian Manhunter added, I felt like a candle beside a sun, and yet beneath the power there is something profoundly human. Pain, determination, an absolute conviction that transcends mere belief. Wonder Woman nodded. He is no simple tyrant. He truly believes he's saving humanity. That makes him more dangerous, not less. Batman turned back to the main screen, which displayed satellite imagery of the Emperor's fortress. We have 12 hours until the summit. Rest, review the data. Be prepared for anything, his voice dropped slightly, and have contingencies ready if this goes wrong. As the meeting dispersed, Batman remained at the console, studying the fortress with focused intensity. Something about the Emperor gnawed at him, beyond the obvious threat. The certainty in his tone, the ache that Superman and John had sensed beneath that godlike power. What could drive a being of such strength to such extremes? What had he witnessed that convinced him absolute control was the only path to survival? Dawn broke over the Sahara, painting the dunes gold and crimson. The Justice League arrived at the designated coordinates via boom tube, emerging onto a vast plateau that offered a commanding view of the Emperor's fortress in the distance. The massive structure gleamed in the morning light, its golden towers and adamantium walls defying conventional architecture. Awaiting them was an honor guard of the Emperor's forces, standing in perfect formation on either side of a path that led to an ornate pavilion. Unlike the combat armor they had worn during the recent battles, these soldiers were adorned in ceremonial regalia, a fusion of ancient Roman grandeur and futuristic design. Eagles and lightning bolts featured prominently in their iconography, along with a double-headed eagle symbol that seemed to be the Emperor's personal heraldry. At the head of the formation stood Inquisitor Valor, her power armor now exchanged for formal attire that still managed to incorporate subtle defensive systems. Beside her was a towering figure in deep crimson power armor, at least 9 feet tall, his helmet fashioned in the shape of a snarling lion. Justice League. Valoris greeted them with a formal bow. The Emperor welcomes you to the first conclave of Terra Novum. I am Inquisitor Valors, as some of you have already met. This is Captain Leonidas of the Emperor's personal guard. The massive warrior inclined his head slightly but remained silent, his augmented physiology radiating barely contained power. Batman's cowl sensors registered elevated life signs and evidence of extensive genetic modification beyond anything seen in metahumans on Earth. The Emperor awaits within the regalia chamber. Valores continued, gesturing toward the pavilion. You will be treated as honored guests under the ancient codes of parley. No harm will come to you while you remain under the Emperor's hospitality. Your master engineered yesterday's crisis, Batman stated flatly. Forgive us if we find his hospitality suspect. Valors's expression remained neutral. The Emperor revealed a truth your world needed to witness. The entities that breached reality were but shadows of what awaits beyond the veil. Would you prefer to have faced the full manifestation of such threats unprepared? We prefer not to have civilians endangered for the sake of a demonstration, Superman replied firmly. A demonstration that saved countless lives in the long term, Valores countered. But these matters are for the Emperor to discuss if you would follow me. The Justice League proceeded down the path, flanked by the honor guard. Batman noted the precision of their formations, the absolute discipline in their bearing. These were not mindless followers, but elite troops utterly devoted to their leader. The pavilion opened into a teleportation chamber that transported them instantly to the heart of the Emperor's fortress. They emerged into a vast circular hall with a domed ceiling, displaying a real-time view of the cosmos. The walls were lined with artifacts and relics of incomprehensible nature, technologies that seemed to blur the line between science and sorcery. At the center of the chamber stood a circular table of polished black stone, around which were arranged 13 thrones. At the head of the table, seated upon a massive golden throne inscribed with thousands of minute runes and symbols, was the Emperor. He had exchanged his battle armor for formal regalia that nonetheless maintained a martial aspect. A golden breastplate covered a purple robe trimmed with mantle. Upon his brow rested a laurel wreath of golden leaves, simple yet more regal than any crown. His ageless face regarded them with ancient eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. Justice League, his voice resonated, with harmonic overtones that seemed to bypass the ear and speak directly to the mind. Be welcome in this conclave. Please be seated. The thrones around the table were sized for human occupants, crafted with surprising consideration for the comfort and dignity of his guests. As the League members took their places, the Emperor leaned forward slightly, his golden eyes moving from face to face. You have questions, doubts, Concerns. This is natural and expected. You stand as guardians of a world order I propose to transform fundamentally. It would be disappointing if you did not approach such change with caution. You manipulated a crisis to demonstrate your power, Batman said, getting straight to the point. You put civilians at risk to make a political statement. The Emperor's expression remained impassive. I revealed a fraction of the truth in a controlled manner that minimized casualties while maximizing impact. Had I merely spoken of threats beyond comprehension, would you have believed? Would humanity have understood the necessity of preparation? There are ways to prepare Earth for threats without establishing a dictatorship, Superman countered. We've faced invasions, extra-dimensional incursions, gods, and monsters. Each time Earth has prevailed through cooperation, not subjugation. And each time the margin of victory has narrowed, the Emperor replied. Each crisis requiring more extreme measures, more sacrifices, more reliance on a handful of exceptional individuals rather than the coordinated strength of humanity as a species. He spread his hands, encompassing the chamber and by extension his fortress. What I offer is not tyranny but transcendence, the unification of human potential, the elevation of the species beyond its current limitations. At the cost of freedom, Wonder Woman stated. The Emperor's gaze turned to her. What is freedom without security? What is individual choice worth if it leads to collective extinction? In my reality, I witnessed the fall of human civilization during what we called the Age of Strife. Psychers, humans with abilities not unlike your metahumans, emerged without guidance or control. Their untrained minds became gateways for entities of the warp, leading to demonic incursions that devastated entire continents. Advanced AIs turned against their creators. Xenos predators descended upon isolated human colonies. Billions died. His voice grew heavier with the weight of memory. I revealed myself then as I have now. I united Terra under one banner. I created the Primarchs, superhuman generals to lead my legions. I launched the Great Crusade to reclaim the stars for humanity. A shadow passed across his features. And I nearly lost it all to the ruinous powers that corrupt even the most loyal hearts. Dr. Fate leaned forward. These ruinous powers you speak of, they are entities of chaos, of emotion given form in the spaces between dimensions? Precisely, the Emperor confirmed. Gods, some would call them, though they are more akin to parasites that feed on the psychic emanations of sentient beings. Korn, who feeds on rage and bloodshed. Tzeentch, who corrupts through ambition and the desire for change. Nurgle, who offers plague and despair disguised as gifts. And Slanesh, who perverts pleasure and perfection into excess and degradation. We've faced similar entities, Batman pointed out. Trigon, the Lords of Chaos, Darkseid. We've prevailed without surrendering our humanity. You've faced shadows and reflections, the Emperor countered. Powerful, yes, but not the fundamental forces I describe. The warp of my reality is a mirror of collective consciousness, where thought becomes reality and nightmares take physical form. Your universe operates under different metaphysical laws, but the barriers between realities are thinning. What affected my Terra will eventually reach yours. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the table, showing the rifts from the previous day's crisis. Already the echoes have begun. A splinter of the warp followed me here, a psychic wake created by my transition between realities. Small now, containable, but it will grow as this world's psychic potential develops. Your metahumans, your magic users, they generate similar energy signatures to the psychers of my reality. Eventually they will draw the attention of the ruinous powers. Green Lantern spoke up for the first time. The Guardians of OA have maintained order in this universe for billions of years. If these threats you describe were real, they would have prepared for them. The Emperor's expression grew solemn. The Guardians of Oa are powerful, ancient, and wise in many ways, but they are also isolated, removed from the experiences of younger races. They create weapons and bestow them upon champions, but they do not understand the fundamental nature of humanity's potential. His gaze swept across the table once more. Humanity in my reality became the dominant species in the galaxy, not through inheritance or chance, but through necessity and adaptation. When guided properly, human potential is limitless. And you appoint yourself as that guide? Batman asked. Based on your experience in a reality that may bear little resemblance to our own? I appoint myself because there is no other with the necessary perspective, the Emperor replied without hesitation. I have lived for over 40,000 years. I have guided human development since your ancestors first discovered fire. I have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the evolution of the human mind and soul. I have walked the paths between stars and communed with beings you would consider gods. Superman's expression remained resolute. Whatever your experience or power, it doesn't give you the right to decide humanity's future without their consent. I do not seek to rule without consent, the Emperor countered. Already nations approach my representatives seeking alliance. Already, millions witness the protection my forces provide and welcome it. I do not come as conqueror, but as guardian, as guide. A guide who has already begun transforming humans into super soldiers, Batman noted, glancing toward Captain Leonidas, who stood silently at the Emperor's right hand. A guide who has deployed advanced technology selectively to those who serve his vision. The Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. The Astartes program, the creation of space marines, is indeed underway. Captain Leonidas is among the first of this new generation, enhanced humans capable of standing against threats that would obliterate conventional forces. As for technology, would you have me distribute weapons of mass destruction to nations still locked in petty conflicts? Would you have me give psychic amplifiers to a population untrained in mental discipline? Such power without proper preparation leads only to catastrophe. So instead you create an elite force answerable only to you, Green Lantern pressed, establishing a military superiority that makes resistance impossible. I create protectors, not oppressors, the Emperor replied, a hint of irritation entering his voice for the first time. My Astartes are humanity's shields against the darkness, not its jailers, Dr. Fate interjected, his tone measured. The Lords of Order sense the truth in your warnings, Emperor. The metaphysical architecture of our reality is indeed changing, growing more permeable to forces from beyond. But they also sense the danger in your methods, the risk of exchanging one threat for another. The Emperor regarded Fate with something approaching respect. The Lords of Order see clearly in some respects. The barriers between dimensions are thinning, partly due to my arrival, partly due to other factors unique to your reality. Earth stands at a nexus point, a fulcrum upon which multiple realities balance. It makes this world both strategically vital and dangerously vulnerable. He rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the seated League members. With a gesture, the holographic display expanded, showing Earth at the center of overlapping dimensional barriers. What I propose is not the blind imposition of my will, but a structured transition, the formation of a new imperium adapted to this reality's unique properties. An imperium that incorporates the strengths of your current systems while addressing their critical vulnerabilities. And what would this imperium look like? Superman asked, his tone still skeptical. The Emperor waved his hand, and the holographic display shifted to show organizational charts, technological schematics, and social frameworks. A unified human government, with regional autonomy preserved where practical. A military composed of both conventional forces and specialized units like the Astartes. A technological renaissance guided by principles that prevent the creation of threats, such as artificial intelligence rebellion. A structured approach to psychic and meta-human development, ensuring that power comes with responsibility and discipline. And where do Earth's current protectors fit into this vision? Wonder Woman asked. Those of us who are not human or not entirely human, those who serve humanity's interests would be valued allies, the Emperor replied, his gaze lingering on Superman. The Imperium judges by actions and loyalty, not origin. In my reality, I forged alliances with compatible xenospecies where possible. Those who proved themselves friends to humanity earned their place as autonomous allies. Batman's eyes narrowed. And those who disagree with your vision, those who resist? The Emperor's expression hardened. Initial resistance is expected, and will be met with measured response. Education, demonstration, persuasion. Force is reserved only for those who actively undermine humanity's security or serve corrupting influences. And who defines corrupting influences? Batman pressed. I do, the Emperor stated simply, based on 40 millennia of experience with precisely such corruption, based on witnessing the fall of my own sons to the ruinous powers, based on seeing trillion-soul civilizations reduced to ash because they failed to recognize the early signs of chaos influence. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The Emperor surveyed the Justice League members, reading the doubt, skepticism, and concern in their expressions. After a moment, he continued in a slightly softer tone. I do not expect immediate acceptance. I understand the magnitude of the paradigm shift I represent. But consider this. Your world stands at a crossroads. Metahuman emergence accelerates. Magical awareness grows. Extra-dimensional incursions increase in frequency. The old structures strain under pressures they were never designed to withstand. He gestured toward Superman. You, Cal, you have lived among humans, protected them, even loved them, yet you remain apart, a godlike being exercising power at your own discretion. However noble your intentions, is that truly sustainable as more beings of similar power emerge? Is individual heroism, however inspiring, a sufficient answer to systemic threats? His gaze shifted to Batman. And you, who have dedicated your considerable intellect to fighting the symptoms of social breakdown. How many criminals have you apprehended? How many plots have you foiled? And yet has the fundamental nature of Gotham changed? Has your crusade addressed the root causes of the decay you battle nightly? Batman's expression remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed the uncomfortable truth in the Emperor's words. I offer something beyond individual heroism, beyond reactive crisis management, the Emperor continued. I offer humanity a future where it stands united against the darkness, where it advances not through chaotic innovation or alien intervention, but through guided evolution toward its highest potential. He returned to his throne, his golden armor catching the light from the dome ceiling above. You have 3 days to consider. Observe what I build. Speak with those who have joined my cause willingly. Test the truth of my warnings through your own means of divination and investigation. Then return with your answer. And if our answer is no, Superman asked quietly. The Emperor's gaze was steady. Then you will stand aside as humanity chooses its own path. I will not force you to join me, Superman, but neither will I allow you or any other being, however powerful or well-intentioned, to prevent humanity from embracing the security and future I offer. With that, the audience was clearly at an end. Inquisitor Valores stepped forward, gesturing toward the teleportation chamber through which they had entered. You will be returned to your arrival point. You are welcome to travel freely within designated areas of Terranov during your deliberation period. Quarters have been prepared should any of you wish to remain and observe our work more closely. As the Justice League rose from their seats, the Emperor spoke once more, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. Consider not only what I ask, but what I offer. Not merely protection, but purpose. Not merely survival, but transcendence. The path I walked once before I offer now to your Earth. A difficult path, yes, but one that leads to the stars and beyond. With those words hanging in the air, the Justice League was escorted from the regalia chamber, each member deep in thought about the implications of what they had heard and the decision that now lay before them. The Emperor watched them depart, his ancient eyes betraying nothing of his thoughts. Captain Leonidas remained at his side, silent until the chamber had emptied of all save them. They will refuse, my lord, the Astartes captain stated with certainty. Their idealism blinds them to necessity. The Emperor's expression softened slightly. Perhaps. But in refusing, they will reveal much about their limitations and their strengths. Knowledge I require if I am to adapt my methods to this reality's unique properties. Leonidas inclined his head in understanding. And should they actively oppose your will? The Emperor rose from his throne, moving to a viewport that overlooked the sprawling complex that had risen from the desert sands in mere days. Construction continued at an impossible pace, guided by technologies brought from his reality and adapted to local conditions, the foundations of a new imperium taking physical form. Then they will learn what countless others have learned, the Emperor replied, his voice quiet but implacable, that the future of humanity is not subject to negotiation, not even with gods. In the Batcave, the Justice League had reconvened to discuss their meeting with the Emperor. The atmosphere was tense, opinions divided about how to proceed. His warnings about dimensional breaches and cosmic threats align with Green Lantern Corps intelligence, Hal Jordan admitted. The Guardians have detected increasing instability in certain sectors, particularly those adjacent to what they call reality fault lines. Dr. Fate and I have observed similar phenomena in the mystical realms, Satana added. Barriers that were once impermeable now show signs of thinning. Constantine reports the same from his contacts, she finished. Batman stood before the main computer, which displayed images of the Emperor's fortress and the technologies demonstrated by his forces. The threats may be real. That doesn't justify his methods. What troubles me, Superman said, is that he's not entirely wrong about our approach. The Man of Steel paced slowly, his expression troubled. We react to crises as they emerge. We deal with symptoms more often than causes, and he's right that we operate without real oversight or accountability. You're not seriously considering his offer? Flash asked incredulously. Superman shook his head. No, but I'm acknowledging that he's identified real problems with the status quo. The question is whether there's a third path, between his absolute control and our current reactive approach. What about the people joining him? Wonder Woman asked. Inquisitor Valor and the others we observed, they aren't mind-controlled. They serve willingly, even eagerly. Batman pulled up personnel files on the main screen, his eyes narrowing as he studied them in silence. Helena, former MI6, Gabriel Drennan, biophysicist who disappeared from STR Labs. Maria Morvan, geopolitical strategist who consulted for the UN, Batman read aloud, all brilliant in their fields, all with histories of advocating for stronger global governance and human advancement. He's selectively recruiting those who already align with his worldview, Cyborg observed, and offering them knowledge and power beyond anything they could achieve otherwise. A tempting package, Green Lantern noted, especially when wrapped in the rhetoric of species survival and cosmic destiny. Batman turned to face the assembled heroes. We need more information about his technology, his intentions, and the true nature of the threats he describes. I'll speak with the Guardians, Green Lantern volunteered. Get their assessment of these dimensional instabilities. Fate and I will consult the mystical communities, Zatanna added. See if the warnings have any basis in arcane reality. I'll approach him directly, Superman decided. Request a private audience. He seems to believe he can convince me of his sincerity. Batman nodded. The rest of us will investigate his growing organization, the recruitment patterns, the technology deployment, the strategic locations he's selecting for development. We need to understand his plan in detail before we decide how to respond. As the League dispersed to their assignments, Batman remained at the computer, reviewing the recordings of their meeting with the Emperor. Something in the ancient being's demeanor had struck him, a weight of experience that couldn't be fabricated or exaggerated. Whatever else the Emperor might be, he was not lying about his history, about the horrors he had witnessed and fought against. The question was whether those experiences from another reality justified the remaking of this Earth in his image and what price humanity would ultimately pay for the protection he offered. In the heart of the Emperor's fortress, deep within chambers shielded from all external observation, by technologies beyond human comprehension, the master of mankind knelt alone in meditation. His physical form remained perfectly still while his consciousness roamed across the psychic landscape of Earth, touching billions of minds, sampling the collective unconscious of humanity. This reality was so similar to his own Terra, yet so different. Here humanity had evolved alongside metahumans, alongside aliens who walked openly among them. They had witnessed gods and monsters, survived apocalyptic threats yet maintained a fragmented social order that prioritized individual liberty over collective security. It troubled him. The seeds of greatness were here, the potential he had always seen in humanity, but also complacency, a dangerous naivete about the true nature of the cosmos. They had glimpsed the darkness but never truly comprehended it, never faced the full horror of what lurked beyond the thin veil of reality. His consciousness extended further, probing the metaphysical boundaries of this universe. The warp existed here but in altered form, more stable in some respects, more vulnerable in others. The ruinous powers had not yet consolidated their hold, had not yet turned their full attention to this reality. But they would. The psychic beacon of his own presence would draw them eventually, like moths to a flame. Preparation was essential. Unity was non-negotiable. The Justice League and similar organizations around the globe represented admirable ideals, but lacked the fundamental understanding of what was at stake. Their rejection of his leadership was expected but ultimately irrelevant. He had united Terra once before without the blessing of its fragmented power structures. He would do so again if necessary. The Emperor's consciousness returned to his physical form, his golden eyes opening slowly. Before him floated a sphere of contained energy, a fragment of the warp he had used to create the controlled incursions. Within it swirled crimson and violet patterns of corruption, held in stasis by his will alone. With a gesture, he expanded the containment field, allowing the energies within to grow slightly. The next demonstration would need to be more convincing, more personal for the heroes who stood as this world's protectors. They needed to understand viscerally what failure would mean. Sometimes compassion required cruelty. Sometimes to save the many, the few must glimpse the abyss. And you, who have dedicated your considerable intellect to fighting the symptoms of social breakdown, how many criminals have you apprehended? How many plots have you foiled? And yet has the fundamental nature of Gotham changed? Has your crusade addressed the root causes of the decay you battle nightly? Batman's expression remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed the uncomfortable truth in the Emperor's words. I offer something beyond individual heroism, beyond reactive crisis management, the Emperor continued. I offer humanity a future where it stands united against the darkness, where it advances not through chaotic innovation or alien intervention, but through guided evolution toward its highest potential. He returned to his throne, his golden armor catching the light from the domed ceiling above. You have 3 days to consider. Observe what I build. Speak with those who have joined my cause willingly. Test the truth of my warnings through your own means of divination and investigation. Then return with your answer. And if our answer is no, Superman asked quietly. The Emperor's gaze was steady. Then you will stand aside as humanity chooses its own path. I will not force you to join me, Superman. But neither will I allow you or any other being, however powerful or well-intentioned, to prevent humanity from embracing the security and future I offer. With that, the audience was clearly at an end. Inquisitor Valori stepped forward, gesturing toward the teleportation chamber through which they had entered. You will be returned to your arrival point. You are welcome to travel freely within designated areas of Terranov during your deliberation period. Quarters have been prepared should any of you wish to remain and observe our work more closely. As the Justice League rose from their seats, the Emperor spoke once more, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. Consider not only what I ask, but what I offer. Not merely protection, but purpose. Not merely survival, but transcendence. The path I walked once before, I offer now to your Earth. A difficult path, yes, but one that leads to the stars and beyond. With those words hanging in the air, the Justice League was escorted from the regalia chamber, each member deep in thought about the implications of what they had heard and the decision that now lay before them. The Emperor watched them depart, his ancient eyes betraying nothing of his thoughts. Captain Leonidas remained at his side, silent until the chamber had emptied of all save them. They will refuse, my lord, the Astartes captain stated with certainty. Their idealism blinds them to necessity. The Emperor's expression softened slightly. Perhaps, but in refusing they will reveal much about their limitations and their strengths. Knowledge I require if I am to adapt my methods to this reality's unique properties. Leonidas inclined his head in understanding. And should they actively oppose your will? The Emperor rose from his throne, moving to a viewport that overlooked the sprawling complex that had risen from the desert sands in mere days. Construction continued at an impossible pace, guided by technologies brought from his reality and adapted to local conditions, the foundations of a new imperium taking physical form. Then they will learn what countless others have learned, the Emperor replied, his voice quiet but implacable, that the future of humanity is not subject to negotiation, not even with gods. In the Batcave, the Justice League had reconvened to discuss their meeting with the Emperor. The atmosphere was tense, opinions divided about how to proceed. His warnings about dimensional breaches and cosmic threats align with Green Lantern Corps intelligence, Hal Jordan admitted. The Guardians have detected increasing instability in certain sectors, particularly those adjacent to what they call reality fault lines. Dr. Fate and I have observed similar phenomena in the mystical realms, Zatanna added. Barriers that were once impermeable now show signs of thinning. Constantine reports the same from his contacts, she finished. Batman stood before the main computer, which displayed images of the Emperor's fortress and the technologies demonstrated by his forces. The threats may be real. That doesn't justify his methods. What troubles me, Superman said, is that he's not entirely wrong about our approach. The Man of Steel paced slowly, his expression troubled. We react to crises as they emerge, We deal with symptoms more often than causes, and he's right that we operate without real oversight or accountability. You're not seriously considering his offer? Flash asked incredulously. Superman shook his head. No. But I'm acknowledging that he's identified real problems with the status quo. The question is whether there's a third path between his absolute control and our current reactive approach. What about the people joining him? Wonder Woman asked. Inquisitor Valor and the others we observed. They aren't mind-controlled. They serve willingly, even eagerly. Batman pulled up personnel files on the main screen, his eyes narrowing as he studied them in silence. Helena, former MI6. Gabriel Dranin, biophysicist who disappeared from STAR labs. Maria Morvan, geopolitical strategist who consulted for the UN. Batman read aloud. All brilliant in their fields. All with histories of advocating for stronger global governance and human advancement. He's selectively recruiting those who already align with his worldview, Cyborg observed, and offering them knowledge and power beyond anything they could achieve otherwise. A tempting package, Green Lantern noted, especially when wrapped in the rhetoric of species survival and cosmic destiny. Batman turned to face the assembled heroes. We need more information about his technology, his intentions, and the true nature of the threats he describes. I'll speak with the Guardians, Green Lantern volunteered. Get their assessment of these dimensional instabilities. Fate and I will consult the mystical communities, Zatanna added. See if the warnings have any basis in arcane reality. I'll approach him directly, Superman decided. Request a private audience. He seems to believe he can convince me of his sincerity. Batman nodded. The rest of us will investigate his growing organization, the recruitment patterns, the technology deployment, the strategic locations he's selecting for development. We need to understand his plan in detail before we decide how to respond. As the League dispersed to their assignments, Batman remained at the computer, reviewing the recordings of their meeting with the Emperor. Something in the ancient being's demeanor had struck him. A weight of experience that couldn't be fabricated or exaggerated. Whatever else the Emperor might be, he was not lying about his history, about the horrors he had witnessed and fought against. The question was whether those experiences from another reality justified the remaking of this Earth in his image, and what price humanity would ultimately pay for the protection he offered. In the heart of the Emperor's fortress, deep within chambers shielded from all external observation by technologies beyond human comprehension, the master of mankind knelt alone in meditation. His physical form remained perfectly still, while his consciousness roamed across the psychic landscape of Earth, touching billions of minds, sampling the collective unconscious of humanity. This reality was so similar to his own Terra, yet so different. Here humanity had evolved alongside metahumans, alongside aliens who walked openly among them. They had witnessed gods and monsters, survived apocalyptic threats, yet maintained a fragmented social order that prioritized individual liberty over collective security. It troubled him. The seeds of greatness were here, the potential he had always seen in humanity, but also complacency, a dangerous naivete about the true nature of the cosmos. They had glimpsed the darkness but never truly comprehended it, never faced the full horror of what lurked beyond the thin veil of reality. His consciousness extended further, probing the metaphysical boundaries of this universe. The warp existed here, but in altered form, more stable in some respects, more vulnerable in others. The ruinous powers had not yet consolidated their hold, had not yet turned their full attention to this reality. But they would. The psychic beacon of his own presence would draw them eventually, like moths to a flame. Preparation was essential. Unity was non-negotiable. The Justice League and similar organizations around the globe represented admirable ideals, but lacked the fundamental understanding of what was at stake. Their rejection of his leadership was expected, but ultimately irrelevant. He had united Terra once before without the blessing of its fragmented power structures. He would do so again if necessary. The Emperor's consciousness returned to his physical form, his golden eyes opening slowly. Before him floated a sphere of contained energy, a fragment of the warp he had used to create the controlled incursions. Within it swirled crimson and violet patterns of corruption, held in stasis by his will alone. With a gesture, he expanded the containment field, allowing the energies within to grow slightly. The next demonstration would need to be more convincing, more personal, for the heroes who stood as this world's protectors. They needed to understand viscerally what failure would mean. Sometimes compassion required cruelty. Sometimes to save the many, the few must glimpse the abyss. His decision made, the Emperor stood, the sphere of contained warp energy floating before him. With careful precision, he began to shape it, to direct its corrupting influence toward specific targets. The Justice League would receive their object lesson in the true nature of the threats he had described, and perhaps then, they would understand the necessity of his methods. The fate of humanity in this reality, as in his own, would be decided not by idealism or democratic process, but by the cold calculus of survival, as it had always been, as it must always be. High above the Emperor's fortress, Superman hovered silently, observing the sprawling complex from a distance. His enhanced vision registered details invisible to normal humans. The intricate patterns in the construction, the movement of personnel, the deployment of technologies that defied understanding. The fortress had expanded significantly in the day since their meeting, new structures rising from the desert floor with impossible speed. Workers labored around the clock, many augmented with cybernetic enhancements that allowed them to interface directly with the advanced machinery. At the center, golden towers rose ever higher, forming what appeared to be a massive communications array pointed toward the stars. His communicator chimed softly. "Superman," Batman's voice came through clearly. "What do you see?" "Construction continues at an accelerated pace," Superman reported. "The main complex has nearly doubled in size. They're building what looks like landing pads for aircraft, though. Nothing I recognize from Earth technology. Our intelligence suggests he's established similar construction sites at strategic locations globally," Batman replied. "Smaller outposts, but built with the same advanced technology." "He's creating a network," Superman frowned. "Have you determined his power source?" "The energy requirements for this scale of construction must be enormous." "That's the concerning part," Batman said. "Our sensors detect minimal heat signatures or radiation. Whatever powers his operation, it's beyond our current understanding of physics." Superman was about to respond when a flash of golden light from the central tower caught his eye. His enhanced vision focused on the source, and he saw the Emperor himself standing on an observation platform, looking directly at him, as if he had known exactly where Superman hovered miles above. The Emperor raised his hand in a gesture that was both greeting and invitation. "He sees me," Superman informed Batman. "I think he's inviting me down for that private conversation." "Proceed with caution," Batman advised. "We still don't know the full extent of his abilities or his true intentions." "Understood." Superman ended the communication and began his descent toward the indicated platform. As he approached, he noticed that the platform was isolated from the rest of the complex, a private space seemingly designed for contemplation or conversation away from the activity below. The Emperor stood alone, his golden armor gleaming in the desert sun. He had foregone the formal regalia of their previous meeting, presenting himself as a warrior rather than a ruler. His flaming sword was sheathed at his side, a silent reminder of the power he commanded. Superman landed softly on the platform, maintaining a respectful distance. "You knew I was watching." "Your presence registers on multiple spectrums," the Emperor replied. "Physical, psychic, electromagnetic. You do not easily go unnoticed, Kal-El of Krypton." Superman's eyes narrowed slightly at the use of his Kryptonian name. "You've been researching me." "I have researched all who might significantly impact the implementation of the imperial truth on this Earth," the Emperor acknowledged. "Your history is particularly relevant. The last son of a dead world, raised among humans choosing to protect rather than rule, despite possessing powers that would allow you to dominate." He gestured for Superman to join him at the edge of the platform, overlooking the vast desert beyond the fortress perimeter. "In many ways, your path mirrors aspects of my own, though in miniature. I too chose protection over domination, guidance over subjugation. The difference lies in scale and perspective. You have lived for decades. I have lived for millennia. You have seen threats to cities and planets. I have seen threats to reality itself." Superman remained where he stood, studying the being before him. "Why did you request this meeting?" Because of all Earth's protectors, you are uniquely positioned to understand my purpose, the Emperor replied. You are not human, yet you have dedicated yourself to humanity's protection. You have the power to rule, yet you choose to serve. You recognize humanity's potential while acknowledging its current limitations. I also believe in freedom, Superman countered, in the right of people to choose their own path, even if that path contains risks. The Emperor turned fully toward him, his ageless face unreadable. And if their choices doom them? If their freedom leads to extinction? Would you still stand aside in the name of principle? There's always another way, Superman insisted. One that preserves both safety and liberty. A comforting illusion, the Emperor said, not unkindly. One I myself once entertained before witnessing the full horror of what awaits an unprepared humanity. He extended his hand, palm open. Let me show you what I have seen, what drove me to the methods you find so objectionable. Superman hesitated, understanding that the offer involved some form of psychic connection. Your demonstration with the rifts was sufficient. That was a shadow of a reflection, the Emperor replied. I offer you the unfiltered truth, the knowledge that shaped me so you might understand the necessity behind my actions. For a moment, Superman considered refusing. But his need to understand this being who threatened to reshape Earth's future overrode his caution. He nodded once and stepped forward. The Emperor's hand touched Superman's forehead, and the world dissolved. Superman found himself floating in a void, witnessing history unfold at impossible speed. He saw Earth, but not his Earth, a planet ravaged by conflicts spanning millennia, the rise and fall of civilizations, the age of technology where humanity spread to the stars, the catastrophic rebellion of artificial intelligence, the age of strife where psychers emerged uncontrolled, becoming gateways for entities of nightmare. He witnessed the Emperor's emergence, uniting Terra through diplomacy where possible, warfare where necessary. The creation of the Primarchs, superhuman generals to lead his legions, the great crusade to reclaim human colonies across the galaxy, the discovery of the Chaos Gods, entities that fed on emotion and corrupted reality itself. Then came the Horus heresy, his most beloved son turned against him by chaos corruption. A devastating civil war that shattered the Imperium. The final confrontation where the Emperor was mortally wounded, sacrificing his physical freedom to maintain the psychic beacon that allowed humanity to navigate the warp safely. 10,000 years of slow decay followed. The Emperor trapped on the golden throne, his body withering while his mind remained the bulwark against ceaseless chaos incursion. The Imperium became a shadow of his vision, twisted into religious dogma and bureaucratic oppression. Yet still it stood against horrors that would have otherwise consumed humanity entirely. When the vision released him, Superman staggered and fell to one knee on the platform. The weight of 40,000 years of memory, of uncounted billions of deaths, of civilizations rising and falling, of horrors beyond comprehension, threatened to overwhelm even his Kryptonian mind. Now you begin to understand, the Emperor said softly, his voice almost gentle. Why half measures cannot suffice. Why unity must come before all else. Why humanity must be guided with force if necessary, away from the precipice it cannot see. Superman rose slowly, his expression haunted by the visions he had witnessed. Your reality was different. The threats you faced may never manifest here. They have already begun, the Emperor countered. The rifts were not merely demonstration but warning. My arrival has created a psychic wake between realities. What affects one universe eventually echoes in others, especially those connected by beings of sufficient power. He turned, gesturing toward the horizon. Already your Justice League investigates signs of instability. Already your mystics report thinning barriers between dimensions. The seeds of what destroyed my reality are present in yours. Different in form, perhaps, but similar in essence. Superman's expression hardened, his resolve returning despite the weight of the vision. Even if the threat is real, your methods remain unacceptable. There must be a way to prepare, to defend, without sacrificing the very freedoms that make humanity worth saving. The Emperor regarded him for a long moment, something like sadness passing across his ageless features. I had hoped you might see beyond your limited perspective, that you might recognize the necessary sacrifices required for species survival. What I recognize, Superman replied, is that the moment we sacrifice our ideals in the name of security, we've already lost what's worth defending. The Emperor's expression shifted, hardening into resolve. Then we stand at an impasse. I cannot permit idealism, however noble, to endanger humanity's survival. And you cannot accept methods you deem tyrannical, however necessary. He turned away, eyes fixed on the growing fortress below. Return to your Justice League, Kal-El of Krypton. Tell them what you have witnessed. And when the time comes, as it surely will, remember that I offered partnership before opposition. Superman rose into the air, hovering for a moment. This isn't over. There's still time to find another way. Time, the Emperor said softly, is precisely what humanity lacks. He did not turn as Superman departed, his golden eyes fixed on the horizon, fixed on a future only he could fully envision. Within the Batcave, the Justice League reconvened, each member bringing reports from their investigations. Superman's account of his vision dominated the discussion, the implications disturbing even the most skeptical members. The threats he showed you, Dr. Fate said gravely, align with warnings from the Lords of Order. The barriers between realities are indeed weakening, though not yet to the catastrophic extent he describes. Green. Lantern Corps records confirm similar phenomena, Hal Jordan added. Dimensional breaches are increasing in frequency and intensity across multiple sectors. The Guardians are concerned, though they believe existing protocols are sufficient. Batman stood before the main display, which showed a global map with the Emperor's growing network of installations highlighted in red. His operations have expanded exponentially. Governments are beginning to align with him, offering resources, territory, and authority in exchange for technology and protection. The public narrative is shifting as well, Cyborg reported. Social media analysis shows increasing support for his imperial truth ideology, especially after the recent Rift incursions. People are scared, and he's positioning himself as the only one with answers. Wonder Woman's expression hardened. We cannot dismiss the threats he warns of, nor can we accept his methods. We stand at a crossroads, not just of action, but of principle. I might have a third option, Batman said, drawing everyone's attention. Based on the technology we've observed and the metaphysical principles fate has outlined, I believe we can create a dimensional stabilizer network, something that addresses the immediate threat without surrendering to his vision of a new Imperium. He brought up schematics on the main screen. It would require combining Kryptonian crystal technology, Atlantean energy manipulation, and mystical binding techniques from Dr. Fate's arsenal, a distributed network of stabilization nodes at key global locations. That could work, Cyborg said, analyzing the schematics. But it would take time to develop and implement. Months at minimum. Time the Emperor won't give us, Superman warned. He's accelerating his plans. The vision he shared wasn't just to educate me, it was to justify immediate action. He believes delay equals death. Then we need to buy time, Batman concluded. A direct confrontation is inadvisable, given what we know of his power. Instead, we present an alternative to world leaders, a third path that addresses the threat without surrendering sovereignty. You want to outmaneuver him politically, Flash realized. Precisely, Batman confirmed. While developing the technological countermeasure to the dimensional instabilities, we fight on both fronts, technological and ideological. The strategy had merit, but events were already moving beyond their control. As the League debated their approach, alarms blared throughout the Batcave. Cyborg connected to the monitoring systems, his expression turning grim. Multiple Rift incursions detected, larger than before. Tokyo, London, New York, Moscow, and a dozen other major cities simultaneously. The main screen shifted to live footage from the affected areas. Unlike the controlled incursions before, these rifts pulsed with malevolent energy, disgorging entities of nightmare into reality. In Tokyo, a massive serpentine creature composed of shifting faces writhed through the Shibuya district, its passage melting glass and leaving onlookers catatonic. In London, humanoid figures of blood and brass rampaged through Westminster, their weapons igniting the very air with unnatural flame. This isn't a controlled demonstration, Superman realized with horror. These are true incursions. The Emperor was right, Wonder Woman said grimly, readying her weapons. The barriers are failing faster than anticipated. Batman's eyes narrowed as he analyzed the pattern. This is too coordinated, too simultaneous. Something accelerated the process. His gaze turned to Superman. When he shared that vision with you, could he have used the connection to accelerate the deterioration somehow? Superman's expression darkened at the possibility. He said his arrival created a psychic wake between realities. The mental connection might have widened it further. Intentional or not, we need to respond. These entities are beyond conventional military capacity to contain, Green Lantern warned. Divide and deploy, Batman ordered. Priority on civilian evacuation and containment. Engage only when necessary, and with extreme caution. These entities may operate under different physical laws than we're accustomed to. As the Justice League mobilized, the main screen displayed one final feed, a live broadcast from the steps of the United Nations headquarters in New York. Amid the chaos of a city under attack stood the Emperor. His golden armor gleamed in the unnatural light of a nearby rift. His flaming sword raised high as his forces formed a defensive perimeter. People of Earth, his voice thundered. Not through machines, but within every mind simultaneously, a psychic broadcast that overcame all barriers. You witness now the truth I have warned of. The barriers between realities fracture. Horrors beyond comprehension emerge. Your conventional defenses cannot stand. Your heroes, however noble, are too few. Behind him, his Astartes warriors engage the monstrous entities with precision and devastating effect. Their weapons, designed for war against the warpborn, cut through matter and corruption alike. Where conventional militaries faltered and even metahumans struggled, the Emperor's soldiers advanced with machine-like efficiency. I offer not conquest, but salvation, the Emperor proclaimed, his voice resonating with psychic force and absolute conviction. Not subjugation, but elevation. Stand with me now, and humanity shall weather this storm, united. Resist and face extinction divided. With a sweep of his flaming sword, he carved through reality itself, closing the rift nearest the UN building in a brilliant flare of golden light. The wave of psychic energy washed outward, dispersing corruption and momentarily stabilizing reality itself. The choice stands before you, he concluded. Security through unity or freedom, and annihilation alone. Choose wisely, for time grows short. The broadcast ended, but the message was already shaping global consciousness. As world leaders huddled in emergency sessions and civilians fled the chaos, the Emperor had positioned himself as both prophet and savior. His warnings were validated by the horrors now manifesting worldwide. The Justice League fought valiantly across the globe, containing incursions, evacuating civilians. But the scale of the crisis quickly overwhelmed even their combined might. The entities emerging from the rifts seemed to adapt to metahuman energies, growing stronger the longer they fought. In New York, Superman battled a monstrosity of twisted flesh and machinery. His heat vision seared through its bulk only for the wounds to regenerate instantly. This thing is adapting to my abilities, he reported over comms. Conventional attacks are losing effectiveness. Same here, Flash responded from London, his voice strained. These things aren't mindless, they're coordinated and learning fast. At the Watchtower, Batman coordinated the global defense from dozens of simultaneous battlefronts. They're targeting infrastructure and defense grids first, he observed. Population centers are secondary. This isn't chaos, it's strategy. On another monitor, the Emperor's forces advanced into multiple incursion zones. Unlike the League's defensive posture, his armies struck directly at the heart of the rifts. Their specialized weapons and enhanced physiology, allowing them to contain the horrors with brutal efficiency. Reports flooded in from governments worldwide, requesting the Emperor's aid. One by one, nations accepted his offer of protection. His forces deployed across continents at impossible speed, establishing bases of control. The political balance shifted with every hour. Fear drove governments to embrace security over sovereignty. Batman's third path was rapidly collapsing under the weight of panic. After 18 hours of unrelenting crisis, the Justice League regrouped at the Watchtower, exhausted, bruised, and grimly aware of the strategic situation. The global map told the story clearly. Regions under the Emperor's protection were stable. Areas defended by the League or conventional militaries continued to fall. We're losing, Green Lantern said bluntly, his uniform scorched from battle. Not just tactically, but strategically. Every hour, more of the planet falls under his control. This was his plan all along, Batman said quietly. Create a threat so great that surrender becomes the only rational choice. Are we certain he created it? Wonder Woman asked, binding a wound that refused to heal. These incursions feel genuine, beyond even his control. Created, accelerated, or simply anticipated, Batman replied. The result is the same. He positioned himself as the solution before the crisis even peaked. Superman stared at the tactical display, frustration in his eyes. Whatever his motives, people are dying while we argue. If his forces can contain the threat better than we can, you're suggesting we surrender to his rule? Batman interrupted sharply. I'm suggesting we prioritize survival, Superman countered. Work with him now. Debate ideology later. Dr. Fate, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. The corruption spreads beyond the physical. If not contained within 12 hours, the damage to reality could become permanent. The silence that followed was heavy. They had 12 hours to save not just lives, but creation itself. Batman studied the displays for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. We need his knowledge and resources to fight this, but on our terms. Cooperation, temporary with boundaries and exit clauses. Will he accept anything less than total control? Green Lantern asked. He calls himself humanity's savior, Batman replied. Let's see if he's willing to prove it. The decision made, Superman contacted the Emperor and requested an immediate parley, neutral ground. The response came within seconds. One word, agreed. The meeting took place on the damaged observation deck of the Empire State Building, a symbolic vantage point over a half-ruined city. The Emperor arrived alone, his golden armor scorched but his composure unshaken. You come seeking alliance, he said without preamble. We come seeking cooperation to address an existential threat, Batman corrected. The debate about your Imperium can wait until humanity's survival is secured. The Emperor's golden eyes moved between them. And your terms? Full information sharing, Superman began. Joint command of combined forces. A moratorium on political consolidation until the crisis is contained. You ask me, the Emperor said, arching an eyebrow. To delay humanity's unification while chaos consumes your world? The very scenario I sought to prevent through earlier action, the Emperor said evenly. We ask you to prove that protection truly is your priority, not dominion, Wonder Woman countered. If humanity's survival comes first, as you claim, then our proposal serves that goal while respecting humanity's right to choose its future once the crisis passes. The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes fixed on the partially corrupted city below. Tendrils of unnatural energy writhed between buildings as reality itself became malleable, where the warp intrusion spread. Very well, he finally said. A temporary cooperation under the terms you propose. My knowledge and forces will be shared to contain the immediate threat. Political consolidation will pause for the duration of this crisis. His eyes hardened slightly. But know this. When the immediate danger passes, humanity will face a choice between continued vulnerability and the security of unity. Today's horrors are but a preview of what awaits an unprepared Earth. Batman's expression remained impassive. One crisis at a time, Emperor. Humanity has survived extinction before. We'll face your philosophical debate when today's battle is won. With terms established, a truly coordinated response began. The Emperor shared detailed knowledge of the warp entities, their vulnerabilities, strengths, and methods of containment. Members of the Justice League were paired with Astartes squads, combining metahuman abilities with specialized warp combat techniques. Dr. Fate and the Emperor's Psychers established a global stabilization network at critical juncture points to reinforce the barriers of reality itself. The fighting that followed was brutal, the cost immense. Cities bore scars that would never fully heal. Thousands died. Millions witnessed horrors that would haunt them for generations. Yet slowly, methodically, the tide turned. Incursion by incursion, rift by rift, the invasion was contained, then pushed back. 48 hours after the crisis began, the final major rift was sealed in a combined operation that saw Superman and the Emperor working side by side. Their powers complemented one another in ways that revealed what might have been possible had trust existed from the beginning, as the golden light of the Emperor's psychic might merged with Superman's Solar energy to close the breach. A moment of understanding passed between them. Not agreement, not reconciliation, but mutual recognition of conviction and purpose. In the aftermath, as nations assessed damage and counted the dead, as reality stabilized and the immediate threat receded, one question remained unanswered. What would follow? The Emperor had honored his word, focusing entirely on the crisis without leveraging it for political gain. But his vision of a unified humanity persisted. His certainty remained unshaken. Future threats would demand unity under his guidance. The Justice League had proven their worth beyond question, their integrity and heroism shining through insurmountable odds. But doubts lingered. Could liberty-driven heroism alone safeguard a world now proven vulnerable to cosmic forces beyond comprehension? 3 days after the final rift closed, representatives of the Justice League and the Emperor's inner circle met on neutral ground, a remote island, in the Pacific untouched by chaos. The setting sun cast long shadows across a simple stone table where Earth's future would be decided. The Emperor, dressed not in battle armor but in simple robes that somehow carried the same commanding presence, spoke first. The immediate crisis has passed. Our agreement has been fulfilled. Now humanity stands at the crossroads I foresaw. Batman, representing the Justice League alongside Superman and Wonder Woman, nodded. And yet Earth remains standing, without surrendering its freedom. For now, the Emperor acknowledged. But barriers remain weakened. What came through was merely the vanguard of what will eventually turn its gaze fully toward this reality. Preparation must continue. Unity remains essential. Perhaps, Superman said carefully, there's a middle path we failed to consider. In the heat of crisis, one that preserves freedom while acknowledging the need for greater coordination against existential threats. The Emperor's expression registered mild surprise. You propose an alternative to my Imperium. We propose a compact, Batman explained. A new global organization. One that incorporates elements of your technological and strategic methods, but preserves individual rights and national sovereignty. A shield against the darkness that doesn't require humanity to surrender its light. He activated a holographic display over the table. Floating diagrams traced a vision of an organized, cooperative future. A unified defense network against extra-dimensional incursions. A global regulatory framework for psychic and metahuman development. Technological advancement guided by ethical oversight, all supervised by a council representing both nations and specialized experts in mysticism and science alike. You would have me surrender? My vision for this compromise, the Emperor observed. His tone neither dismissive nor accepting. His ancient gaze lingered on the projection, eyes that had seen galaxies burn and empires collapse. After witnessing firsthand the price of division and delay, Wonder Woman said firmly, we would have you fulfill your stated purpose. Protection without domination. Guidance without tyranny. You claim to fight for humanity's future. This ensures they have one worth fighting for. The Emperor fell silent once again. The weight of millennia pressed upon his decision. The ghosts of countless worlds and failures shaping his thoughts. None at the table could truly comprehend the scope of what he weighed, or the cost of the choice before him. Your proposal has merit, the Emperor finally said, surprising them with his openness. It addresses certain critical vulnerabilities while maintaining aspects of your societal structure you clearly value, but it contains flaws, assumptions of continued stability in a reality now fundamentally destabilized by my arrival and the events that followed. Then help us refine it, Superman suggested. Bring your experience to strengthen the approach rather than replace it entirely. Prove that your goal truly is humanity's elevation, not merely its subjugation. An interesting challenge, the Emperor mused. To guide without ruling. To protect without controlling. His golden eyes moved across the faces of his counterparts. My experience suggests such half measures ultimately fail when crisis reaches its peak. Divided purpose leads to divided response when unity is most critical. Then prove that theory wrong, Batman countered. You've lived millennia, seen countless outcomes. Perhaps it's time to test a new approach. One adapted to this reality's unique properties, rather than imposing methods forged for another universe entirely. Again, that long silence as the Emperor considered their words. The sun had fully set, and stars glimmered above. Stars that in his reality had witnessed humanity's rise and fall, the endless wars against chaos, the attrition of a hostile galaxy. But here they remained untouched, worlds unclaimed, potential unrealized. "I will consider your proposal," he said at last, "and offer modifications that address its critical vulnerabilities. A true compromise demands concessions from both sides. Are you prepared to make them when my counter-proposal exposes uncomfortable truths about your world's preparedness?" "We are," Superman replied without hesitation, "as long as the core principles of freedom and self-determination remain intact." The Emperor rose from the table, his towering form framed against the starlit sky. "Then we have the beginning of understanding, if not yet agreement. I will withdraw my forces to primary installations while these negotiations proceed. The knowledge and technology already shared will remain available for containment efforts." He turned to leave, then paused. For an instant, something almost human flickered in his expression, an uncertainty alien to a being of his nature. "In my reality, I walked a path alone, carrying the burden of foresight none could share," he said quietly. Perhaps, he hesitated as though the words themselves resisted being spoken. "Perhaps here another path is possible. We shall see." With a flash of golden light, he was gone. The Justice League members exchanged glances, fully aware of both the danger and opportunity that moment represented. Not victory, not defeat, but something far more complex, the beginning of a negotiation that would shape humanity's destiny. "Can we trust him?" Wonder Woman asked, voicing what they all felt. "No," Batman answered bluntly, "but neither can we dismiss him. The threats he warned of proved real, even if his solutions are unacceptable. We walk a narrow line between extinction and tyranny." Superman looked up at the stars, serene again after days of chaos. He's lived too long, seen too much death and betrayal. He's watched his vision fail once before. No wonder he believes absolute control is the only way. And yet, Batman observed, he agreed to consider an alternative. That suggests adaptability, a capacity we can use if we stay united and careful. The three stood in silence, the weight of the cosmos pressing on their thoughts. They were negotiating with a being who had ruled an empire spanning thousands of worlds, who had faced gods and demons alike, who wielded experiences older than recorded history. Finding balance between his ruthless pragmatism and their unshakable ideals would be humanity's greatest trial. "Whatever comes next," Superman said finally, his voice steady, "humanity deserves the chance to face it without surrendering what makes life worth saving. Freedom, compassion, the right to choose, even when that choice carries risk. Then that's what we fight for," Batman concluded. "Not against the Emperor, but for a future where his protection doesn't cost humanity its soul." As they prepared to depart, the sky above the island shimmered. The constellations shifted, reforming into patterns no astronomer could explain before settling back into their normal alignment. A silent reminder that reality itself remained fragile and malleable. Far away, from the tallest spire of his fortress, the Emperor watched the same cosmic flicker. His expression remained unreadable, but his hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. The ruinous powers had tasted this new reality. They would return, stronger, hungrier, and more deliberate. The great game was expanding, and this universe would become its next arena. Compromise might suffice for now. Cooperation had proven more effective than he expected, but the fundamental truth remained unchanged. Humanity required unity, or it would perish. Whether that unity came through negotiation, necessity, or reluctant acceptance, it would come. It must come. The alternative was unthinkable. Far beyond the orbit of Pluto, a rent in reality pulsed, its edges leaking sickly, iridescent light. Faint whispers echoed from within, voices older than stars, promises drenched in despair. They sensed him. The Emperor's psychic presence illuminated the cosmos like a beacon. Their ancient enemy had survived, reborn in this new realm, and they hungered to meet him again. Through the breach came the faintest ripple of intent, curiosity, malice, and hunger intertwined. A new campaign was beginning. New souls to corrupt, new civilizations to warp, new gods to challenge. And at its heart stood humanity, again at the crossroads of destiny, caught between the certainty of the Emperor's order and the fragile freedom the Justice League swore to defend. High above the fortress world of his making, The Emperor of Mankind gazed out into those alien stars, familiar and foreign all at once. So much remained to prepare. The League understood the threat in theory, but not in essence. Not in the marrow-deep terror of witnessing worlds consumed by chaos. They would learn, in peace if possible, in fire if not. The path forward was uncertain, a divergence from the rigid dogma that had guided his existence for millennia. Yet perhaps in this new universe with its living gods and hopeful mortals, adaptation would serve better than command. One truth, however, transcended all realities. He would protect humanity, whatever the cost. Whatever sacrifice was demanded, even if that sacrifice was the simplicity of absolute rule. The Emperor of Mankind had not come to the DC Universe as conqueror, but as guardian. The form that guardianship would take remained undefined, a fragile negotiation between incompatible visions bound by a single cause: the survival of the species. Time would decide whose ideals would shape the coming era: the League's hope, or the Emperor's unyielding logic, or something new. Forged in the fire between them, the stars watched, silent and ancient, and beyond them, in the spaces between, primal forces stirred, watching Earth with renewed hunger. The Emperor's golden eyes flared faintly as he sensed that far-off gaze. "They come," he whispered into the night. Then, after a moment's pause, "This time humanity will stand ready. The war for tomorrow had only just begun."